If you've been looking for an easy chocolate cake recipe, look no further. Hello and welcome to Knack Kitchen, where we are going to be making a super easy and absolutely delicious no oven chocolate cake. So we start by adding some salt to cover the base of our pressure cooker. Don't be alarmed by the quantity of the salt because you can always store it back and use for cooking purposes later. As for the lid, we have to remove the rubber that surrounds the rim of your lid, and we also remove the whistle because we do not need it for baking the cake. Now, we close our pressure cooker and preheat it for 30 to 40 minutes while the batter gets ready. I first, however, like to prepare my cake pan, so here I'm cutting a circle for the base of my tin using some butter paper. The method shown here is the easiest way to ensure that your parchment paper fits the base of your cake pan perfectly. As for greasing the pan, I prefer to use oil, but you can use butter, and if you do not have parchment paper, then you can dust some flour after greasing with oil or butter. Once you've added the parchment paper, make sure that you brush that with oil as well so that the cake does not stick to the paper. So now we can finally start on our cake batter. I start by putting some butter in a saucepan, and then we add about half a cup of water and we heat this mixture until the butter melts and the water starts to simmer. We are left with an emulsion which looks like this. Now we set this aside on a separate bowl and let it cool. At this stage we go ahead and add some coffee powder and vanilla extract. Now, if you do not like coffee, please do still add coffee to this cake. You're not going to taste the coffee, but it will enhance the chocolate flavor. As for vanilla extract, if you do not have vanilla extract, then you can always substitute that with some vanilla essence. Now, in a separate bowl, we're going to take the dry ingredients. So first, we are going to add some flour, followed by some cocoa powder, and we are using two types of leavening agents. I'm using both baking soda and baking powder. If you do not have baking soda, you can substitute that for an additional teaspoon of baking powder as well. So you sift all the dry ingredients. This just ensures that our final cake batter will be lump free. So now we go in with the sugar, and I'm using regular sugar over here. You do not need superfine sugar or caster sugar. Regular sugar that we use in our kitchen works perfectly here. Now by this time our butter mixture would have cooled down, so we can go ahead and add our eggs one at a time and whisk those in as well. You can even whisk the eggs beforehand and then add them directly to your butter mixture, and that would work as well. Make sure that you're whisking the eggs properly because we do not want any streaks of raw eggs in the batter. And now we can go ahead and add our dry ingredients to the wet ingredients. I like to do this in batches because it ensures that there are no lumps in the batter. For this recipe, I generally add my dry ingredients in 3 batches. So once all of our dry ingredients have been added, we continue mixing the batter until all of the dry flour has been incorporated. At this stage, be careful not to overmix. When you see that there is no dry flour remaining, stop mixing. Now we can go ahead and add our batter into the prepared cake tin. Make sure that you get out as much of the batter as you possibly can by scooping through all of the edges. Go ahead and use your spatula to smoothen the top of your cake and then tap it on your countertop to get rid of any air bubbles. Now we're ready to add our cake to the pressure cooker. Make sure that you have a stand below your cake tin because you do not want the base of your cake tin to come in contact with the pressure cooker, because that way your cake might end up being burnt at the bottom. So after 50 minutes, give your cake a look. It should be cooked through. The best way to test is to press slightly at the center, and if it's firm and it springs back, then it's ready. While the cake is warm, run a knife around the edges to loosen the cake from the tin. And now let this sit for about 10 minutes before you invert it out onto a wire rack. Peel off the parchment paper and let the cake sit on a wire rack until it comes to room temperature, while we move on to making the chocolate ganache. For the ganache, we start with some cream which we heat on a saucepan on medium-low flame until the cream simmers and you see a few bubbles start to creep in. At this point, you take the cream off the heat and pour it directly on your chocolate. Here, I'm using a combination of both dark and milk chocolate. We're going to let it sit for a couple of minutes so that the chocolate starts to melt. That just makes the whisking a whole lot easier. Making things look pretty is unfortunately not one of my talents. So over here, the only advice I'm going to give to you is that just pour the ganache as evenly as you can all over the cake and let it drip over the sides and cover the entire cake. Try to get it as smooth as you can, and hopefully you'll do a better job than I did. So here we have the final cake, and looks aside, it is definitely one of the best chocolate cakes that you're ever going to make or eat in your lifetime. It is very fluffy, very moist, and absolutely delicious. I really do hope that you give this recipe a try. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.